Forget what you think you know about traditional battlefields. Seriously. Modern conflict, it's fundamentally altering global power in ways we maybe couldn't have pictured just a decade back. It's not just about boots on the ground anymore. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging right into that. How cutting-edge tech, think cyber warfare, drones, missiles, sophisticated air defense is really reshaping the incredibly complex Iran-Israel-U.S. dynamic.
Right.
We've got a stack of your sources here, articles, research, expert takes, all aimed at giving you a solid understanding.
Yeah, we've tried to pull together the key stuff.
Exactly. Our mission, like always, is to pull out those crucial nuggets of insight, give you those aha moments, and hopefully leave you feeling informed but not totally overwhelmed.
We'll unpack the tech, the strategies, sticking strictly to what the sources are telling us.
Okay, let's get into it.
Well, what's really striking, I think, is how the battlefield itself has just expanded, right? We're not only talking physical locations. Our sources make it clear that cyber warfare is now this critical, often unseen front, but with very, very tangible effects.
Tangible effects, yeah. I mean, the sources detail specific Israeli cyber ops reported targeting of Iranian financial places like Bank Sipa, crypto platforms too. How big a deal are these kinds of digital hits for a country's stability?
Oh, extremely significant. We're talking, according to the reports, losses for Iran hitting over $90 million. That's a direct, pretty substantial hit to their financial system. It shows how this digital stuff has real-world economic teeth.
And Iran's response. They reportedly ramped up their own countermoves. What else are we seeing in cyberspace besides these direct financial attacks?
Well, defensively, you see reports of Iran shutting down big chunks of its internet, banning officials from using connected devices, things like that.
Right, trying to lock things down.
Yeah, exactly. But crucially, they've also reportedly stepped up their own sort of clandestine cyber campaigns, targeting Israeli and U.S. infrastructure.
And that goes beyond just tit-for-tat financial stuff.
Oh, yeah. We're talking broader things like disinformation campaigns, cyber espionage, hacking incidents linked to really critical sectors, water, energy, telecoms. It's like this invisible chess game where even the basics become targets.
So the digital realm is one huge new frontier, but the actual skies, the physical skies, they've become just as critical, haven't they? This is where UAVs, drones really come into play, and Iran has built up quite an arsenal here.
They really have. The spread of UAVs is it's a genuine game changer. Look at their Shahed series, for instance.
Okay.
The Shahed 129. It's a medium-altitude combat drone, pretty long endurance, reportedly carries missiles. And what's really annoying is its reported heavy use in Syria, plus its export to Russia.
Yeah, that export to Russia, that's not just selling weapons, is it? It kind of signals Iran's growing ability to project power, test tactics via proxies, essentially pushing the costs of conflict on others while extending their own reach.
That's a good way to put it.
And then you got the Shahed 136, the so-called kamikaze drone.
Yes, the Shahed 136. It's a loitering munition. It's real strategic value. It's cheap. Reportedly around $20,000 each.
Great.
Which means they can be used in large numbers, just swarms, to try and overwhelm air defenses. And more recently, sources mentioned the Shahed 136B.
Okay, an upgrade.
Supposedly with things like ECCM, electronic countermeasures, basically, tech to try and jam or dodge enemy defenses, and even reports of AI helping coordinate these swarms.
AI coordination for a $20,000 drone. Wow. That's evolving fast. And it gets even more serious with the Shahed 149, the Gaza drone.
Right, the 149 Gaza. That's a male drone, medium altitude, long endurance. We're talking impressive endurance, like 35 hours, a long range, maybe 3,000 kilometers. And it can carry a pretty hefty payload, reportedly 500 kilos, with guided weapons.
That's serious reach and punch.
And beyond the Shaheds, the Mohajer series is also key. The Mohajer 6 is a multi-role combat UAV, decent endurance and range, can carry laser-guided bombs, and crucially provides real-time ISR intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, eyes in the sky.
Giving them that critical battlefield picture.
Exactly. And like the Shahed 129, this one's also reportedly been exported to Russia.
And the newest one, the Mohajer 10.
Yeah. The Mohajer 10 reportedly steps things up again. Longer range, about 2,000 kilometers, 24-hour endurance, carries about 300 kilograms, and importantly has EW, electronic warfare capabilities.
So it can actively mess with enemy systems.
Potentially, yes. And we also hear about other models, the Mirage 521, that's a VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing.
Useful for tricky launch spots.
Right. And the Arash-2 loitering munition. Smaller ISR drones, too. It's a pretty diverse fleet they've assembled.
Which brings us to tactics. How are they actually using all these different drones?
Well, the impact is huge. Iran and its proxies reportedly deployed these mixed drone swarms. You might have attack drones, ISR units providing targeting, maybe even jammers, all working together, coordinated potentially by AI to confuse and just swamp the defenses.
And this whole low-cost attrition thing, it sounds terrifyingly clever. Using $20,000 drones to make your opponent fire off, say, an Iron Dome interceptor that costs way, way more.
That's the economic angle. You're bleeding the defender financially.
Forcing them to spend maybe 10, 20, 50 times more to shoot down your cheap threat than it costs you to launch it.
Precisely. And it's not just theory. We see reports of Iranian drones used by Hezbollah, by the Houthis, and, like you said, supplied to Russia, which has definitely changed things in Ukraine. This tech is going global.
Okay, so moving from drones up to missiles, ballistic, and cruise missiles, sources reported a pretty intense period recently, right? Almost 400 missiles reportedly fired at Israel between June 13th and 16th.
Yeah, a significant number. But what's also key there is that, despite the volume, reports suggest only about 20 actually hit urban areas. Israeli defenses proved pretty effective.
Effective, but at what cost? And sources also suggest Iran's own missile stockpile took a big hit during that exchange.
That's right. It raises real questions about sustainability, the cost-benefit of launching attacks like that, especially if your own inventory gets significantly depleted.
And Iran's pushing ahead with more advanced systems, too, like the Fajar-5 MLRS multiple launch rocket system.
Yeah, the Fajar-5, it's got decent range, around 70 kilometers, pretty big warhead, maybe 90 kilograms. And crucially, some GPS-guided versions for better accuracy, reportedly used against military targets, infrastructure, even shipping.
But then there's this talk of growing precision, even stealth. The Kheibar Shekan missile reportedly got past Israeli defenses.
That's what some sources indicate, yes. It suggests Iran's capabilities in making missiles harder to detect and intercept are improving. That's a critical development, forcing defenders to constantly upgrade their systems.
Definitely. And then there's the hypersonic ambition. Missiles like the Fatah that's aiming for that next level of speed, maneuverability, making interception incredibly tough.
That's the bleeding edge they seem to be exploring. Now, on the flip side, defensively, Iran's own air defenses, some based on older Russian S-300s, have reportedly had a tougher time against things like Israeli stealth aircraft and cyber-enabled attacks.
So a potential vulnerability there despite having decent systems on paper.
It seems so. The integration, the countermeasures against sophisticated electronic warfare and stealth, that seems to be a challenge.
But Russia's reportedly helping out. How big a deal is that collaboration?
It looks pretty significant, according to reports.
Mm-hmm.
Russia helping Iran improve air defense, cyber capabilities, even co-developing drone production in Russia.
Okay, so that's not just selling hardware. That's knowledge transfer, maybe even joint development.
Exactly. It strengthens Iran's defenses, but also deepens those strategic ties. Could lead to more advanced systems, shared tactics down the line. It signals a potentially long-term partnership there.
Which leads to the big question. How is Iran actually building all this increasingly sophisticated stuff, especially with international sanctions in place?
Yeah, it's a complex puzzle. We know from reports that Iranian UAVs often use Western-made parts, things like IMUs.
The guidance systems, basically.
Right, the sophisticated internal navigation bits, and SDR's software-defined radios for flexible communications. These parts reportedly trickle in through really complex global procurement networks. It shows how hard it is to completely seal off sanctions.
So they're finding ways around, and they're also trying to build more themselves. Indigenization.
Definitely. There's a big push to make these systems domestically become less reliant on those outside supply chains.
And the workarounds. I remember reading about that U.S. drone incident.
Yeah, the drone shot down reportedly over the UAE back in 2011. The claim is Iran got hold of it and reverse engineered it.
So literally taking it apart to figure out how it works and build their own versions.
That's the suggestion. It shows real ingenuity in acquiring and adapting tech, even captured tech. And they're also reportedly using supply chains, maybe linked through China, to mass produce things like those swarm drones. It suggests a pretty adaptable manufacturing base.
Okay, so if we connect all these dots, this is where it gets really interesting, doesn't it? Iran seems to be weaponizing these drone swarms, everything from the cheap kamikazes to the sophisticated long-range ones, maybe using AI to make them harder to stop.
And they're combining that, reportedly, with more precise missiles, maybe even stealthy ones, alongside older stuff like the Ever rockets.
Right, and layer on top of that the cyber attacks hitting finance, infrastructure, plus the electronic warfare, the disinformation. It's this multi-pronged approach.
Creates a really complex threat profile. It's not just one thing you have to defend against, it's all these different vectors, often simultaneous.
So this high-tech but still asymmetric warfare model lets Iran project power, reportedly, even without matching its rivals plane for plane or tank for tank. It fundamentally changes the game, doesn't it? Especially across the Middle East, but maybe beyond too.
It really does seem to represent a major shift. It shows how nations can use this blend of accessible, off-the-shelf tech combined with some sophisticated homegrown stuff to challenge adversaries who might have, much larger conventional military budgets.
So, thinking about this, what does it all mean for you listening? We've just walked through how advanced tech is seriously reshaping conflict, making strategies that seemed like sci-fi maybe just years ago, well, a reality today.
Yeah.
Maybe consider how this mix accessible tech meeting sophisticated capabilities could force all global players, really, to rethink their old military playbooks, their defense strategies in the coming years, because this battlefield, it just keeps evolving.
It's this constant high-stakes race between offense and defense, all turbocharged by technology. It's something we definitely need to keep watching, not just for today, but for where the strategic competition is heading tomorrow.